You observed being an area Marine method glory? It would not. It method waking up every day and forgetting who you had been before they turned you into this 300 years of killing, and you can't even do not forget your very own call. They call it provider. You name it nothing due to the fact you've been educated now not to experience whatever at all. So what takes place while you, in the end, begin to recall? I've forgotten what it appears like to be hungry. No longer the gnawing edge of battlefield deprivation or the calculated fasting before ritual combat. However, the easy human pain of wanting meals because your frame asks for it. I realize I as soon as understood this. There has been a boy long ago who scraped marrow from bones in the underhive warren of Absalom Prime, who sucked moisture from moss developing in corroded pipes, who discovered to differentiate between 5 styles of mold by taste alone. That boy had a name that become now not Kale. That boy knew starvation as an associate, now not a strategic challenge. I can't remember his face anymore. The apothecaries inform me that is ordinary. They are saying the gene seed integration smooths away such weaknesses that the psycho-indoctrination and hypnotic conditioning replace frivolous memory with tactical statistics, scripture, and the liddies of our bankruptcy. They say this as though it's far mercy. Possibly it's far. I do no longer know anymore. I've served the angels penitent for 347 Terran years, and I can recite each verse of the Catechism of Chains, can strip and reassemble a bolter in 17 seconds at the same time as reciting the rites of protection, can calculate firing answers for orbital bombardment in my head even as my heart's beat at 200 cycles in keeping with minute. But I can't take into account my mom's voice. The chapter tells us we are accelerated past such issues. We are angels of demise, instruments of the Emperor's will, residing guns solid in pain and tempered in religion. The Imperium paints us on propaganda posters. Golden warriors descending from the heavens to save the confronted devoted and annihilate the heretic. Children are taught our names in scholar training. Instructed we're heroes who by no means falter, in no way doubt, by no means bleed without purpose. The truth is smaller and stranger than that, and infinitely extra terrible. We live in silence. The fortress monastery of penitence vigil orbits a dead global whose call was burned from imperial information 12,000 years in the past. Its halls are carved from asteroids welded together over millennia. Corridors huge enough to house our armored bulk, however narrow sufficient to sense like veins in a few widespread useless thing. The walls are naked stone, unadorned, keep for the chains that dangle in each junction, in each chamber. Chains that represent the weight of our sins and the sins of humanity. Chains were meant to hold without question till loss of life releases us. We do not speak except ritual demands it. We do now not acquire for companionship. We do no longer sing or chuckle or argue philosophy inside the quiet hours. The silence is our second skin, our steady partner. The water we swim through without noticing until you understand you've been drowning in it for hundreds of years. I wake each day to the equal sequence. The restraints release from my sarcophagus with a hydraulic hiss that echoes within the mobile. A valid I have heard 43,000 times. Deliver or take a few hundred. My frame responds before my thoughts absolutely engages. Muscle reminiscence lifting me upright as my primary heart quickens to waking rhythm and my secondary coronary heart begins its assisting beat. The air in my cellular is recycled and cold, scrubbed easy of moisture and heady scent, sterile as a medic facility. I vicinity my feet at the stone floor, cold against skin that barely registers temperature anymore, and that I stand. The ritual begins. First, the chains of contrition. I lift them from their hooks. 40 m of blessed metallic hyperlinks, every bearing microscopic. Inscriptions of sins committed via the chapter due to the fact our founding. The blended weight is 370 kilograms, viable for my improved frame, however vast sufficient to check in. I drape them across my shoulders and again, the steel cold, even via my black carapace implants, and that I stand for the prescribed time of mirrored image, 60 seconds throughout which I'm meant to ponder my unworthiness. I try this. I have constantly accomplished this. But currently, inside the silence of that minute, I observe how the weight settles into familiar grooves in my flesh. How the skin has thickened there over the centuries, calloused and fashioned with the aid of this exact burden repeated daily. I am now not taking into consideration my sins. I am honestly watching for the minute to stop. This troubles me, and that I push the idea away. Subsequent, the ablutions of denial. I strip and enter the cleaning chamber wherein jets of near-freezing water combined with caustic, cleaning soap scour my skin. The soap smells of nothing. Its miles designed to dispose of heady scent to depart as odorless as surgical contraptions. I scrub methodically, beginning from the scalp and operating downward. The equal pattern each morning, ingrained so deeply I may want to do it while subconscious. I watch the water circle the drain, barely gray with dead pores and skin and accumulated dirt, and that I try to consider the last time I checked out my very own frame with something comparable to interest or difficulty. Years, truly, perhaps decades. I am now not beautiful despite what the propaganda indicates. My pores and skin is a patchwork of scar tissue and chemical burns, discolorations wherein rejuvenate treatments have been implemented inconsistently, pale expanses where nerve harm has killed sensation. My muscle tissues are grotesque, swollen beyond human share, striations seen below the skin like ropes under canvas. My face, after I glimpse it within the polished metallic of the chamber wall, is extensive and brutal. The bone structure altered by way of osmodular implants, forehead ridge mentioned, jaw too wide, eyes too far apart. I look like something carved from meat by way of an enthusiastic however unskilled sculptor. The chaplain call this transcendence. I call it not anything, because I'm not speculated to be aware. After ablutions come the stimulants. I go back to my cell and open the small cupboard beside my sarcophagus, casting off the syringe already organized by way of the bankruptcy serfs. The cocktail adjustments based on projected hobby for the day, but always includes neurotropics to beautify recognition, moderate psychotropics to suppress emotional variance, and loyalty conditioning dealers whose unique chemistry I'm no longer cleared to realize. I inject into the port on my neck, feeling the cold unfold of the fluid getting into my bloodstream, and that I remember to 30 as my stronger metabolism approaches and distributes it. By the point I end counting, the world has sharpened. Colors are barely greater vivid. Sounds have greater definition. My thoughts move faster, cleanser, organized in neat tactical hierarchies. The indistinct unease I felt for the duration of the chains of contrition has evaporated. I experience centered, practical, equipped. That is higher. I tell myself, this is accurate. I get dressed in my underneath a Rauer frame glove. Then begin the 90-minute technique of donning my armor with the assistance of two bankruptcy serfs who enter silently, their eyes downcast, their actions practiced. They are old guys, these serfs, augmentatically more suitable to gradual their getting older, however nonetheless visibly historical. Pores and skin like parchment, hands trembling slightly, no matter nerve stabilizers. They've armored me for many years. I do now not know their names. I've never asked. They match each piece with reverent care, talking the proper prayers as they seal joints and activate systems. I stand motionless as a statue, tracking internal readouts as every armor segment links to my black carapace. The neural interface translating device sensation into something my brain processes as extension of self. Whilst the very last seal clicks into vicinity and my helmet locks onto the gorget, I'm not Kale Varani's carrying armor. I'm a weapon device in standby mode anticipating activation. The serfs withdraw without speaking. I am on my own once more, encased in ceramite and plastil, surrounded via recycled air that smells faintly of device oil and my very own filtered breath. I flex my hands inside the strength armor gauntlets, testing reaction time, feeling the moderate postpone between concept and motion that never quite disappears irrespective of how I deal the combination. This delay bothers me every so often. It indicates separation between self and device. It indicates there's nevertheless a self. I continue to the reclusium for morning devotions. The walk takes 8 minutes via corridors I have traversed, so usually I ought to navigate them blind. I pass different battle brothers, every alone, each silent, each transferring with the identical measured stride. We do no longer renowned every other. We do now not make eye touch. We are not brothers in any meaningful experience. We're components of a machine, every running independently till the device requires meeting. I used to discover this comforting. Recently, it feels like drowning. The reclusium is a substantial domed chamber carved from a single asteroid fragment. Its walls inscribed with each war honor earned by the chapter because our founding within the dark days after the heresy. Chains hold from the ceiling in cascading curtains. Thousands of them. Their smooth clink and rattle a steady susurrus that is probably fallacious for whispers in case you were foolish enough to assume chains ought to speak. 352 people collect right here each morning, standing in precise formation. Weapons maglocked to armor, faces hidden in the back of helms. Chaplain Morris stands at the altar, his skull helm glowing inside the mild of braziers that burn with bloodless blue flames. He starts the litany of suffering. His voice is amplified by Vox audio system embedded in his armor, each word echoing via the chamber with enough force to rattle the chains. We reply in unison, our voices merging into an unmarried, thunderous refrain that has no character individual, no private inflection. We're one voice. We're the bankruptcy speaking through many mouths. I mouth the phrases automatically, there which means lost through repetition, decreased to pure phonetics, divorced from semantics. Ache is purity, suffering is provider. Obedience is salvation. We recite these truths for 40 minutes at the same time as kneeling on the stone floor. Our armor's weight distributed through knee joints that have been never designed for this posture. The discomfort intentional and prescribed. Whilst I was more youthful, a trifling century into my career, I felt something throughout these recitations, a sense of cause possibly, or belonging, or transcendence. Now I feel nothing. The phrases are sounds, the pain is records, the ritual is process. Whilst it ends, and we upward push as one, I ponder if the others feel the identical hollow of entirety I do. This sense of having checked a container in preference to commune with something divine. I ponder this. After which I suppress the questioning due to the fact the stimulants are nevertheless energetic, and they make it smooth to push such mind right into a compartment where they cannot intrude with characteristic. We disperse to our assigned duties. Mine for this cycle is training. The practice cages are deep within the monastery's decreased sections. Great chambers with strengthened partitions scarred by using millennia of weapons hearth and blade moves. I am assigned 12 neophytes these days. Fresh from their final implantation surgical procedures, there are bodies nevertheless adjusting to the changes, their minds still fragile with remnants of their former humanity. They stand in a ragged line when I enter, trying to mimic right interest in spite of their obvious pain and confusion. They may be all tall, all vast, all decided on from the best bodily specimens their recruiting worlds ought to provide. However, they may be nevertheless children wearing the our bodies of giants. Nonetheless, learning the way to pass without stumbling, still suffering to process sensory input via structures by no means supposed for mortal flesh. I look at their faces, and I see the same face repeated 12 times with minor versions. Earnest, frightened, determined, hopeful. They assume that is the beginning of glory. They assume they were selected for something spectacular. I understand better. I recognize they may be status at the entrance to a cave that goes down and down for all time. And by the point they attain the lowest, they'll no longer recollect there was ever a floor to return to. I do no longer tell them this. As a substitute, I speak the prescribed schooling liturgy, my voice flat and impassive via my helm's vox grillal. I tell them they're vulnerable. I inform them they're unworthy. I tell them their preceding lives have been meaningless. And best through pain and obedience will they earn the proper to die for the emperor. I inform them this because it is what I was informed, due to the fact it's for our lifestyle. Due to the fact the chaplain display those sessions, and deviation is corrected hastily and painfully. The neophytes concentrate with wide eyes, their superior listening to catching every syllable, their minds filing my words away as sacred truth. We begin with fundamental combat drills. I exhibit proper bolter stance, right trigger field, right respiration cadence between pictures. They mimic me clumsily, their outsized fingers fumbling with training weapons scaled for his or her new proportions. One drops his bolter. The clatter echoes inside the chamber like a prayer bell. Without thinking, I go the space among us in 3 strides and strike him across the face with the lower back of my gauntlet. His head snaps sideways and he falls, blood streaming from his nose and mouth. He does no longer cry out. They have already found out not to cry out. I sense nothing about this. The blow became calibrated exactly, difficult enough to accurate the error, but no longer difficult sufficient to motive lasting harm. It become pedagogical violence sanctioned and necessary. The neophyte rises, recovers his weapon, returns to place. His face is already swelling, but his eyes display most effective determination. Properly, he's gaining knowledge of. In 6 months, he could have forgotten this moment. The shame and pain subsumed into the overall texture of education, indistinguishable from 10,000 different corrections. We drill for 6 hours without ruin. The neophytes circulate from awkward to slightly less awkward, their muscle memory starting to form, their greater physiology permitting getting to know speeds that would be impossible for baseline humans. I watch them, and then I try and don't forget my own schooling. But the recollections are vague and contradictory, overlaid with such a lot of subsequent training cycles that I cannot distinguish my unique enjoy from the limitless times I've determined or performed similar drills. Became I this clumsy? Did I bleed this lots? Did I look at my trainer with the equal determined hope that he could approve of me, well known me, inform me I was doing properly? I do not inform them they're doing nicely. At the cycles cease, I brush aside them without comment. They file out, limping barely, their bodies screaming protests their minds were conditioned to disregard. I watch them move, and that I notice I've already forgotten 3 in their names in spite of having drilled them into reminiscence at the beginning of the session. Their faces blur collectively in my recollection, universal and interchangeable. In a month, most of them will wash out, their bodies rejecting implants or their minds breaking beneath psycho-conditioning. Folks who survive will be a part of the Scout Corporation. And in 10 years, in the event that they stay that lengthy, they may earn the proper to put on right strength armor. In 20 years, they might be promoted to full conflict brother reputation. In 30 years, they'll stand in which I stand now. Education every other batch of neophytes, having forgotten what it felt want to be one. This is the cycle. That is the machine. I return to myself for the midday meditation length. 2 hours of enforced stillness at some stage in which we're meant to study our actions and purge ourselves of pleasure or doubt. I kneel before the small shrine within the corner, a simple iron aquila set up at the wall, and then I try and pray. The phrases come mechanically. Muscle memory of the vocal cords. But I'm now not present in them. My thoughts wanders in spite of the stimulants, in spite of my education, regardless of each protect intended to prevent exactly this type of waft. I consider the neophyte I struck. I think about his face earlier than the blow, younger and open, and his face after, closed and hard. I consider how I created that alternate, how I am a part of the mechanism that transforms youngsters into guns. I think about how that is vital, how the Imperium wishes us, how without the Adeptus, humanity would have been swallowed by using Xenos and Chaos millennia in the past. I consider how this justification feels true and fake concurrently. The way it sits in my thoughts like a stone that is in some way also whole. These thoughts are dangerous. I understand them as dangerous. I should report them to Chaplain Mortis. Put up to corrective conditioning. Permit the chapter to clean away those difficult edges earlier than they grow to be cracks. But I do not. I preserve the thoughts non-public, hidden. A small act of riot, so minor it barely qualifies as defiance. I inform myself I can file them later. I tell myself they may be brief aberrations due to fatigue or imbalanced stimulant dosing. I tell myself many things, and I believe none of them. The afternoon brings combat sporting activities. My squad, 9th Squad of the 4th Organization, is assigned attack drills in the shipbreaker yards, a section of the monastery in which captured enemy vessels are dismantled for take a look at and salvage. The environment is intentionally chaotic. Jagged metal protrusions, unstable flooring, bad lights, regions of difficult vacuum alternating with pockets of toxic atmosphere. We move through it in full armor, live ammunition loaded, schooling towards servitor objectives programmed to simulate or conduct patterns. There are 9 of us, although we're speculated to be 10. Brother Castile was lost 3 months in the past on Morses 4, torn apart via a chaos spawn that stuck him during a void shield failure. We've not changed him. We do now not talk about him. His armor was recovered, sanctified, and saved in the armory. His gene seed turned into extracted and positioned in cryostorage. His name was introduced to the reclusium partitions. This is how we system loss effectively, completely without grief. Due to the fact grief is weak spot, and we are an accepted weak point. I lead the squad through the exercising. Hand indicators most effective. Vox silence maintained. We breach bulkheads, clean cubicles, remove targets with scientific precision. My squad movements like an unmarried organism, each member waiting for the other's actions through centuries of shared combat. Brother Thane covers my left method angles without being requested. Brother Lucian advances exactly 3.5 seconds once I signal. Not earlier than, no longer after. Brother Corvus continues overwatch from extended positions. His sniper rifle getting rid of threats earlier than they can interact the squad. We're ideal. We're synchronized. We're exactly what we're supposed to be. And it looks like nothing. I execute a servitor with a headshot at 40 and that I sense no delight. I coordinate a flanking maneuver that eliminates 6 objectives without casualties and that I feel no satisfaction. I watch my brothers carry out perfectly and that I feel no camaraderie. I am staring at myself from a distance watching a weapon gadget perform. Inside perfect parameters and that I cannot locate the person that is supposed to be doing the looking at. I'm the motion and the observer concurrently and neither role feels real. The exercising concludes after 4 hours. We police our ammunition, carry out equipment exams, and go back to the armory in silence. The serfs get rid of our armor with the equal ritual care they carried out at some point of dawning. I stand bare in the disrobing chamber, my frame steaming slightly within the cool air, and eye appearance down at my hands. They're significant, scarred, the knuckles enlarged from repeated trauma. They do not seem like fingers that should belong to someone. They appear to be gear-shaped for particular capabilities. Grip, strike, weigh down. I flex them experimentally, and that I cannot take into account the last time I used them for something gentle. Did I ever keep something fragile? Did I ever contact some other character with care? The reminiscence surfaces unbidden, probable dislodged with the aid of the day's stimulant aggregate. I'm 8 years antique, perhaps 9, in the underhive. I am preserving something small and warm. A kitten, I think, or a rat doggy, a few tiny creature that radiated heat and heartbeat. I held it carefully, cupped in each fingers, feeling its speedy pulse against my hands. I remember being surprised that something so small could be alive, that life will be contained in this type of fragile bundle. I bear in mind trying to defend it. I do no longer keep in mind what occurred to it. The reminiscence ends there, reduce off, likely suppressed in the course of psycho-conditioning due to the fact such sentimentality serves no tactical motive. I stand within the disrobing chamber, protecting my arms in the front of my face, looking to recreate the sensation of that small, heat weight, and that I cannot. My hands are too big now, too tough. They might weigh down this sort of factor without that means to. They're calibrated for warfare and not anything else. This realization need to now not bother me. It does besides. Nighttime brings the dinner party of ashes, our unmarried everyday meal. We accumulate inside the refectory, 352 folks seated at long tables of naked stone, and we devour our rations in silence. The meal is same each day, a nutrient paste designed through apothecaries to provide ideal sustenance for our enhanced metabolism, supplemented with the aid of communion wafers that include hint quantities of gene seed cloth to enhance our organic connection to the bankruptcy. The paste tastes like not anything that is intentional. Flavor is pleasure and satisfaction is weakness. I consume automatically, spooning the paste into my mouth, swallowing without chewing. Around me, my war brothers do the equal. Loads of equal gestures repeated simultaneously. A stressful synchronization that no one else appears to note. I experiment the refectory and that I see the identical face repeated masses of times. Slight versions in scarring and bone shape, however essentially equal in its brutal vacancy. We are copies of copies, reproductions of a template designed 10,000 years in the past. And something made us people has been worn away by using repetition until only the template remains. I look down at my plate and the paste has taken on a gray tone that makes me think about ash, although its color has not in reality changed. I consider how we name this the Feast of Ashes. How even our single meal is framed as penance as opposed to sustenance. How we aren't allowed to enjoy even the simple biological necessity of ingesting. I think about how I've consumed this actual meal approximately 126,000 times, and that I can't keep in mind an unmarried example that stands out from another. They have all collapsed into one everlasting meal, one limitless repetition of the same empty ritual. I am doing it once more. The dangerous wondering, the noticing. I pressure myself to finish the meal. I stand with the others when the chaplain earrings the bell. We report out in silence and go back to ourselves. The evening stretches beforehand. For hours of private time before the sound asleep cycle. Hours we are meant to spend in prayer or guns preservation or look at of tactical manuals. I do this stuff. I've usually accomplished these items. Tonight, I do something distinctive. I get right of entry to my personal facts slate, a battered piece of equipment I've carried for 2 centuries, and I start reviewing my fight logs. The bankruptcy keeps exhaustive statistics of every engagement, every kill, every tactical decision made by way of each warfare brother. My file is vast. 347 years of provider, 219 showed campaigns, about 87,000 established kills, 16 wounds severe enough to require prolonged medical intervention, 42 commendations for valor, 0 disciplinary incidents. I scroll through the entries reading summaries of battles I participated in however cannot recollect. Pacification of Hive Primus on Tanai 7th. 18,000 insurgents eliminated. Zeno's incursion on Guardia Station. For 63 Genastilers purged. Chaos cult suppression on Mortiles. Populace decreased from 12 million to compliance threshold of 3 million. The numbers blur collectively. Every marketing campaign indistinguishable from the others. Each area a name connected to kill counts and tactical consequences, but without sensory memory or emotional content. I used to be there. I realize I was there due to the fact the logs say so, because my armor's device spirit recorded my bio signs at the one's coordinates during the one's time periods. However, I do no longer don't forget being there. I do now not recall faces or voices or the odor of burning cities. I remember the moves, can visualize the tactical situations, however they feel like something that came about to a person else, like history I studied rather than events I participated in. Well, did I stop remembering? I search backward through the logs, seeking out the ultimate campaign I can certainly don't forget with any clarity. I find it 6 years ago, the suppression of a worker insurrection on Gaina Primus. I remember that one because something uncommon befell. A toddler, maybe 7 years old, ran out from a barricade at once towards my role. She turned into screaming. However, I couldn't hear the phrases through my helmet's audio filters, which have been set to reduce ambient noise under combat-relevant thresholds. She had something in her hands, small and dark. Risk evaluation protocols flagged her as possibly explosive tool service, suicide bomber, 93% possibility, primarily based on behavioral pattern evaluation and neighborhood tactical state of affairs. I shot her from 15 mass reactive round to middle mass, and he or she got hericide, like something manufactured from wet paper. I do not forget this because after she exploded, tiny fragments of what she were sporting scattered across the rubble discipline. No longer explosives, bread, hard ration biscuits that the rebellious workers were hoarding. She had been bringing meals to someone, likely her family, possibly hiding close by, and my shot had not handiest killed her, however destroyed the meals as nicely. I consider standing there for a second, perhaps 2 seconds, looking at those scattered crumbs combined with her blood and tissue. I remember wondering that she had now not been a chance, that my assessment had been incorrect, that I had killed a child for sporting bread. I don't forget feeling something sharp and terrible seeking to form in my chest some emotion that had no call. Then, Brother Sergeant Malchus, my squad leader at the time, voxed me to forestall standing like a statue and preserve strengthen. The instant ended. I moved ahead. The feeling dissipated, smoothed away by means of education and stimulants and the sheer momentum of the engagement. We finished the suppression. Compliance was restored. 17,000 people have been culled to inspire cooperation among survivors. I obtained a commendation for retaining hearth discipline beneath ambiguous situations. I never thought about the woman again till this night. I sit in my mobile gazing the record slate screen, seeing her explode again and again in my mind's eye. The picture in some way greater vibrant now than it turned into within the moment. I see the breadcrumbs settling into the blood. I see her small frame torn into fragments too small to be referred to as human. I see my own armored form status there, weapons nevertheless raised, utterly unmoved. I used to be now not incorrect. In keeping with protocols, she matched the risk profile. My response changed into appropriate. I observed doctrine flawlessly. This is what we do. That is what we're for. However, she became wearing bread. I closed the record slate. My fingers are shaking very barely. Tremor so minor it would not be visible to baseline human notion, but apparent to my enhanced kinesthetics. This is inaccurate. I have to now not be shaking. I should now not be thinking about a single baby among thousands and thousands of casualties collected over centuries of service. I ought to now not be questioning doctrine. These are signs of mental compromise. The primary signs of the doubt's illness that claims Astartes who served too long without proper conditioning reinforcement. I ought to file to Chaplain Mortis immediately. I do not. As a substitute, I kneel earlier than my shrine, and that I try to pray. However, the words stick in my throat like broken glass. I cannot make myself say them. I can't fake I consider them. I kneel there in silence for an hour, perhaps longer, and that I experience something cracking inner me that I did no longer understand became brittle. The slumbering cycle arrives. I input my sarcophagus and prompt the restraints. They close round my limbs with familiar precision, locking me in area, preventing any movement during the chemically brought on unconsciousness the bankruptcy calls relaxation. The lid descends, sealing me in darkness. The sedative combination begins flowing through injection ports in the restraints. Rapid appearing compounds, so one can render me unconscious in 17 seconds. I matter them. 17:15 I attempt to take into account my mom's face. 14:13:12 I can't. 11:10:9 I try to don't forget my authentic call. 8:76 nothing. 5:43 I wonder if the person I was would apprehend the issue I've emerged as. 2:1 darkness. I wake to the equal collection. Restraints release. Hearts accelerate. Feet on bloodless stone. The chains of contrition. The ablutions of denial. The stimulant injection spreading bloodless cause through my veins. The armor equipped with the aid of silent serfs. The walk to morning devotions in which 352 same figures recite words that imply not anything. But these days something is exceptional. Today I be aware I word the way Chaplain Morris's voice sounds nearly bored as he recites the litany of suffering. His words rote and mechanical in spite of the vox amplification. I observe the way the battle brothers round me sway slightly in formation. Tiny moves of fatigue or soreness. They are too properly educated to consciously check in. I notice the chains placing from the ceiling, heaps of them. And I'm wondering who keeps them, who guarantees they do now not tangle or corrode, whether or not there is a few bankruptcy serf whose complete life is dedicated to chain renovation. I'm wondering if he thinks about it. I wonder if he notices the absurdity. These mind should no longer be going on. The stimulants have to have smoothed them away, but they persist, growing louder, like a vox channel starting that has been closed for centuries. The day proceeds in its predetermined pattern, schooling with neophytes who look even greater commonplace than the day gone by's batch, their faces already blurring into the same composite photo. I strike one for fumbling a reload, my gauntlet connecting with exactly calibrated force, and I'm wondering why I struck him. Now, not tactically. I apprehend the tactical reason. However, why do I in my view care whether he fumbles? Why does his inadequacy require violence from me? What's the actual mechanism by using which hitting youngsters makes them better warriors? I do now not have an answer. Combat physical games inside the afternoon. My squad actions through every other training surroundings. This time a simulated hive metropolis indoors, slender corridors, civilian limitations, serve-tour goals dressed in rags to simulate insurgent populations. We clear room after room with perfect performance. I put rounds via 73 targets. Headshot at tiers from 3 to 85 m, each shot a kill. My squad removes 238 targets without taking any harm. We're flawless. I sense nothing. No, that is not accurate. I feel the absence of feeling, which isn't always the same as feeling not anything. I'm conscious that something ought to be gift here, some sense of accomplishment or delight or tribal team spirit with my squad. The attention of absence is itself a feeling hollow and atypical. After the exercising, at some point of the disrowing ritual, Brother Thane speaks to me. This is unusual. We do now not talk outside of tactical necessity. He eliminates his helmet, and his face is like my face, vast and brutal. One eye changed with an augmentic scars cutting white traces through gray skin. He appears at me with that synthetic eye, and he says, You hesitated all through the fourth floor breach 2.3 seconds. What? His voice is flat, curious best within the technical experience, in search of facts to improve overall performance. There is no judgment in it. There is nothing in it at all. I realize he is right. I did hesitate. There had been a servitor gold dressed as a baby, small frame, civilian apparel, and for 2.3 seconds I had not fired. My targeting reticle were locked on middle mass, and my finger had been on the trigger, and that I had now not squeezed. Then I had, and the target had long passed down, but the hesitation had occurred. I say short-term glitch in target acquisition, visible similarity to non-threatment will no longer recur. Brother Element nods, accepting this clarification without query. He turns away the conversation over. However, before he is going, he says the apothecaries can regulate your neurotropic stability in case you are experiencing reputation artifacts. It is nothing to be embarrassed about. I had similar problems after my 4th century. They corrected it. He walks away. I stand in the disrobing chamber looking him pass, and I consider what he said. Recognition artifacts. A scientific term for remembering things that make you hesitate. A problem to be corrected, smoothed away, deleted from the gadget. He had it. They constant it. Now he does not remembering. Is that what I want? To no longer, don't forget the lady with the bread? To now not observe the vacancy? To not feel the whole pain of 347 years of carrier that have worn away the whole thing that changed into no longer beneficial for killing? I do no longer recognize. That night I skipped the banquet of ashes. This isn't always strictly forbidden, however it's miles ordinary deviation from sample. I go back to my cellular alternatively, and I stand before the shrine without kneeling. I study the iron aquila, and I try and experience reverence or devotion, or maybe just habit. I experience not anything. It's far a piece of steel bolted to a wall. It represents an idea I have been instructed is sacred. I have killed masses of lots of human beings in service to this idea. I cannot take into account why. I get right of entry to my information slate again. I look for records of Absalom Top, my domestic international, seeking out something that might cause recollections of my unique existence. The documents are sparse. Absalom High is an unremarkable hive world. Populace 14 billion, tithe grade slight, compliance repute solid. There aren't any photographs. There is no cultural records. There's handiest class records and export statistics. My home world has been reduced to 3 paragraphs of administrative textual content. I search for data of the recruitment trial that added me here. These documents are greater distinct. I was selected at age 11. Bodily advanced specimen, excessive aggression markers, okay mental plasticity. I underwent initial trials that killed 87% of candidates. I survived implantation surgical procedures that killed 40% of survivors. I persisted psycho-conditioning that broke 30% of ultimate candidates. I emerged 10 years later as a scout, and 10 years after that, as a full battle brother. And now 3 centuries later, I am a brother sergeant education the next generation of kids to undergo the equal method. At what factor did I prevent being the character I used to be and become this? The information does not say. I near the slate. I stroll to the small replicate set up on my cellular wall, polished metal, scratched, and pitted with age. I look at my face. It isn't the face of the boy from the underhive. That boy had brown eyes. My eyes are pale gray, an aspect impact of better optical implants. That boy had tender capabilities, youth fats, clean skin. My face is all hard planes and scar tissue. Bone shape altered by using osmodular skin damaged through chemical publicity and radiation. That boy smiled every now and then, I suppose, or at the least could have if he chose to. I have forgotten a way to circulate the muscle mass required for smiling. I am now not him. He isn't always me. We're linked with the aid of continuity of awareness, through the thread of reminiscence that links every moment to the next. But we are not the same entity. He died so I should exist. And I do now not recognize if that change turned into really worth it. That is doubt. This is the illness. This is what Chaplain Morris warns towards in his sermons. The poison of introspection, the weak spot of questioning. I understand I ought to file it. I recognize the chapter will accurate it. I recognize they'll clean away those thoughts, and I'm able to awaken tomorrow feeling targeted and purposeful, once more equipped to serve without query. But if they clean it away, if they delete this doubt, is enter that no longer the same as killing the remaining fragment of that boy? Is that not a final dying? The extinguishing of the closing spark that asserts I'm someone in preference to something. I do no longer want to die again. I have served for 347 years, and I do now not want to serve anymore. Not like this. Now not as a weapon that has forgotten it became ever a person. However, I do no longer recognize the way to stop. The device maintains jogging whether or not I consent or no longer. I wake and train in combat, and sleep and wake again. And the cycle will maintain until I fall in conflict or my body ultimately fails. Or even then, my gene seed will be harvested and implanted in any other infant who becomes any other weapon who will eventually be aware what I observe. Now, that is what we're. This is the reality underneath the propaganda. We aren't heroes. We are not angels. We are children mutilated into guns and fed stimulants to preserve us from noticing what has been carried out to us. We're slaves who've forgotten slavery. Tools that believe they're wielders, sufferers who have Stockholm Syndrome themselves into loving their captives. And the Imperium needs us. This is the terrible component. Without us, humanity would fall. The threats are actual. The Xenos are real. Chaos is actual. Our service saves billions of lives, preserves worlds, keeps the Imperium throughout a galaxy of horrors. Our struggling has cause. Our sacrifice subjects. Does that make it proper? I do no longer know. I am a weapon. I am now not certified to reply philosophical questions. However, I cannot forestall asking them. The times blur together after that. I undergo the motions. I attend devotions and education and fight sports. I devour my stimulants and carry out my duties without error. However, I am splitting in. The obedient soldier persevering with his routine at the same time as something underneath him screams and thrashes and tries desperately to remember what it became wannabe human. The neophytes blur together until I cannot distinguish them from preceding batches. I strike them when they fail, and that I watch the desire drain from their faces, and I hate myself for being a part of the system that devours kids. However, I do not forestall. I never prevent. My squad notices something is incorrect. They do now not point out it without delay. However, I seize them looking me. Moderate turns of the head, longer than essential I touch. Brother Thane shows again that I speak to the apothecaries. Brother Corvus asks if I'm experiencing ache, his tone suggesting he could report it if I said sure. I tell them I'm best. They receive this due to the fact we are not trained to understand lies. Because honesty is assumed amongst warfare brothers. Due to the fact the idea that one people would possibly conceal internal malfunction isn't something the bankruptcy has prepared us to assume. I am a ghost in my very own existence going through rituals that sense an increasing number of like theater. I carry the chains of contrition and I think about how they're simply steel. I recite the litanies and that I think about how they are simply words. I inject the stimulants and I wonder what would happen if I finished. Could I am going insane? Would I recollect the whole lot? All the youngsters killed, all the cities burned, all the centuries of carrier amassed into one crushing weight. Or could I simply experience ultimately like a person again, even if that character turned into broken? I do now not discover due to the fact I'm no longer brave enough to refuse the stimulants. I'm now not brave sufficient to resist. I am a coward who has spent 3 centuries pretending to be a hero. And now that the mask is slipping, I lack the courage to rip it off completely. 3 weeks after my disaster begins, we obtain deployment orders. The 4th business enterprise is being dispatched to Chronos Secundus, an industrial international inside the Segmentum Tempestus, to suppress a worker rebellion that has disrupted adamantium production. The rise-up has been ongoing for 2 months. Initial guard regiments not able to repair order. Local PDF forces compromised via insurrectionist sympathizers. The state of affairs is described as crucial. The Imperium requires Chronos Secundus output. The people ought to be delivered to compliance. We're advised the insurrection is chaos-tainted, that cultists have infiltrated the workforce, that heretical symbols have been observed inside the habitation sectors. This framing is preferred. Every riot is chaos-tainted once it becomes critical sufficient to require Astartes intervention. Whether this is without a doubt true or simply handy justification is in no way clean. It does now not remember. Our orders are to pacify the planet. We are able to pacify the planet. The transit takes 6 weeks aboard the strike cruiser Emperor's Reproach. 6 weeks wherein I share quarters with my squad in a dormitory that smells of recycled air and gun oil. 6 weeks in the course of which we educate in the ship's exercise stages, attend devotions within the ship's chapel, consume our stimulants on agenda. 6 weeks at some point of which I descend deeper into my own head, looking my body carry out all the correct movements whilst my mind screams silently. Brother Issue approaches me in the course of the 4th week of transit. We're within the exercise variety publish education, servitors clearing gold debris. He stands beside me, each folks nonetheless in full armor, and he says quietly, "You aren't reporting for conditioning, are you?" It isn't a query. It is an announcement of reality delivered without judgment. Curiosity only. I say not anything. He continues, "I understand. I used to be stationed at the Redemption Campaign at some point of my 3rd century. We cleansed 14 systems, 3.6 billion casualties. While it changed into over, I couldn't forestall seeing their faces. They all stacked in my memory like bodies in a mass grave. The apothecaries presented conditioning. I refused for 2 months. I wanted to recollect. I concept I owed them that much. Remembering, he pauses, his augmentic eye wars softly, adjusting attention on something I can't see. Then we deployed again. New war zone, new enemies, and I found out the dead have been interfering with my capability to combat efficaciously. I was hesitating, lacking shots, endangering my squad. So, I went to the apothecaries. They smoothed it away. It all. I do no longer take into account those faces anymore. I do not keep in mind why I wanted to do not forget. I just understand that I function better now. Some other pause. You'll come to the same conclusion. Anybody does. The alternative is to break. And broken war brothers are mercy killed for the good of the bankruptcy. So finally you may pick characteristic or you may choose demise. Those are the handiest options. He walks away. The communique is over. I stand inside the exercise range surrounded by way of servitors and scattered gold fragments, and I reflect on consideration on what he said. Characteristic or dying. The ones are the alternatives. Continue being a weapon or stop being something at all. He is proper. He is glaringly right. But rightness does now not make it harm much less. We arrive at Chronos Secundus on the 1st day of the 7th week. The planet is a gray sphere wrapped in industrial haze. Surface temperature maintained at ultimate manufacturing facility efficiency. Populace of 900 million crammed into habitation sectors adjacent to the manufacturing zones. From orbit, it looks like a tumor, swollen and discolored, veined with transport strains and cooling channels. We install through drop pods. Trendy orbital insertion. 4th organization splitting into fight squads with assigned sectors. My squad is Particular Hammer 9, assigned to Manufacturum District 7. Coordinates transmitted at some point of descent. The drop pod screams via ecosystem. External temperature climbing to 3,000 degree. G-forces compressing my organs. In spite of my improved body structure, I have achieved this hundreds of times. It has in no way felt routine. The primal mammal, a part of my mind that survived all of the surgical procedures, nevertheless registers falling from orbit, as loss of life nevertheless floods my gadget with adrenaline regardless of knowing rationally that I can continue to exist. We hit the ground difficult. Retro thrusters firing milliseconds before effect. Large deceleration that might pulp a baseline human. The pod's hatches blow outward with explosive bolts. And we exit in tactical formation. Guns hot, scanning for threats. The air smells like burning oil and unwashed our bodies. The sky is the coloration of vintage bruises, light filtering through pollutants hazes. We've landed in a manufacturing facility courtyard, large systems growing round us, pipes and catwalks, and towering smokestacks that vomit black clouds. The ground is protected in ash and metal shavings. Bodies are scattered nearby, perhaps 20 of them. Workers who were within the courtyard when we landed, killed via the effect shockwave or the explosive hatch deployment. They have been now not goals. They have been simply within the manor. No person feedback on them. We advanced toward our goal. A manufacturer manipulates center 3 km into the district. Intelligence reports say this is in which the insurrection's leadership is coordinating where they may be broadcasting propaganda to different districts in which they need to be removed to interrupt worker morale. Preferred decapitation strike. The streets are slender for our bulk designed for baseline humans and load servitors. We circulate in column formation, guns scanning roof traces and home windows. The buildings are same gray rocket blocks, thousands of them. Habitation devices stacked like bins, tiny windows, dark or damaged. A few have cloth hangings that might be flags or laundry. Some have graffiti in nearby dialect. Phrases I do no longer recognize. We come across the primary resistance 400 m from our landing area. 50 or 60 workers armed with improvised guns, car guns stolen from PDF armories, industrial tools transformed into golf equipment, and spears. They have got erected a barricade throughout the road. Scrap metallic welded together, firing positions. Behind it, they see us coming and that they open hearth. Bullets pinging off our armor, harmless as rain. Clear them, I ox to my squad. We open fireplace. Bolters roar. Mass reactive rounds tearing through the barricade and our bodies behind it. The employees come apart like dolls. Explosive decompression turning flesh into purple mist. The barricade collapses. We increase through the debris without slowing. The engagement took 11 seconds. I test the aftermath as we skip. The people are useless, glaringly, torn into fragments too small to discover. However close to the barricade, there are different bodies, smaller ones, children maybe, or simply small adults. It's miles difficult to inform. They're sporting civilian clothing, rags typically, and they are protecting matters, banners, symptoms, words written on scrap cloth. I study one as we bypass. The letters are crude, handwritten in something that might be paint or blood. It says, "We're hungry, this is all." 3 words. We are hungry. I preserve taking walks. My squad continues strolling. We have superior 15 m beyond the barricade before I recognize I have stopped processing tactical statistics. My vision has tunneled. My audio filters have dampened to close to silence. I'm seeing best that signal, the one's 3 phrases playing on loop in my thoughts as We are hungry, Brother Sergeant. Brother Thane voxes. Your biosigns display extended stress reaction. Are you compromised? I force my interest again to tactical statistics. Negative. Continuing increase. We proceed. We stumble upon greater barricades. We clear them. Greater workers die. Dozens, then loads. They preserve combating. Even though it is suicide, despite the fact that their guns cannot harm us, despite the fact that they ought to realize they cannot win, they combat anyway because they have got not anything else left. We attain the control middle. It is a fortified structure, strengthened doors, firing positions, perhaps 200 defenders inside. They have got welded the doorways close and are firing through gun ports, focused volleys that could damage lighter armor, but best scratch our ceramite. Well-known siege situation. Brother Lucien Flowers melter expenses on the main door while the rest folks offer suppressing fireplace. The costs detonate with excellent white warmness, turning steel into vapor. We breach before the smoke clears, advancing into the interior. The defenders attempt to hold the doorway. They die. We enhance down corridors, clearing rooms methodically. The resistance is decided, however futile. These are people, now not infantrymen. They've courage, but no schooling. They bunch up in choke factors. They waste ammunition on suppressing fireplace. They make every tactical mistake viable, and we exploit anybody. We attain the command middle at the 1/3 ground. 20 human beings inside. Mix of workers and what is probably PDF deserters clustered around communications device. They turn when we enter. Guns growing, but they do now not fireplace. They simply look at us with expressions I cannot study. Fear and reality, however also something else. Resignation maybe, or contempt. One of them, an antique guy with burn scars overlaying one half his face, says, "We just desired meals. This is all. The quotas had been not possible, and they saved growing, and people have been starving, and we just desired meals." His voice is hoarse, broken perhaps with the aid of chemical publicity. He is not pleading. He's explaining like he thinks we would care. Like he thinks there's some attraction that could paintings. I have a look at him. I try to see him as someone to check in him as in character as opposed to a target. But my education is too deep. I see risk evaluation information masking his frame. Most fulfilling shot placement markers acting on his torso. Probability calculations approximately whether or not he is wearing explosives under his garb. I cannot see him. I will simplest see the target. Emperor's mercy, I say, that is the formulation. It's far what we are meant to say. I shoot him inside the head. His cranium comes apart. The others die in the next 2 seconds. My squad firing simultaneously. 9 bolters, removing 20 objectives with surgical precision. It is over. We break the communications gadget and set incendiary expenses to disclaim the shape to final rebels. We go out and Vox extraction. Are part of the undertaking entire. Different squads are still clearing their sectors, but our objectives are finished. We wait within the courtyard for extraction, status most of our bodies we killed during our advance. There are loads of them now, maybe greater. The ash has turned pink in places wherein blood has pulled. The air smells like cooked meat and voided bowels. Trendy put up combat surroundings. I study the bodies and that I try to sense something. Pleasure at challenge completion, delight at powerful overall performance, even just professional neutrality. I experience not anything. No, that is wrong once more. I feel the absence. I experience the area where feeling have to be. Hollow and aching. Brother Corvus procedures me, maglocking his sniper rifle. Clean operation. 0 casualties. 17 minutes from insertion to objective finishing touch. Terrific time. I nod. That is the right reaction. That is success. However, I am searching at a body close to my feet. A girl may be difficult to tell after the boulder round. And subsequent to her is a small package deal wrapped in fabric. I nudge it with my boot and the cloth falls away, and it smiles a baby little one, maybe 6 months vintage. It become no longer shot. It turned into no longer injured. It just died of publicity in all likelihood or starvation lying in the road wrapped in cloth while its mom fought at a barricade. We are hungry. The extraction Thunderhawk arrives. Engines screaming, downdrafts scattering ash and particles. We board and ascend. The metropolis falling away underneath us. Smoke and hearth seen throughout a couple of districts where other squads are nonetheless engaged. From altitude, Chronos Secundus seems non-violent, geometric, and orderly. The violence too small to register at this scale. We go back to the Emperor's reproach. We disarm and disrobe. We attend debriefing in which the captain opinions our performance and notes our performance. We are counseled. We are exemplary. We're precisely what the bankruptcy wishes. That night, I sit in my quarters and then I try and calculate how many people I've killed. The records is to be had. However, the numbers are too large to conceptualize. 87,000 showed kills. Man or woman goals I, in my opinion, eliminated. However, that does not consist of collateral casualties. Does now not consist of orbital bombardments I coordinated. Does now not consist of cities that burned because my squad referred to as in Fire 8. If I encompass those, the quantity climbs towards hundreds of thousands. A couple of tens of millions probable. I've killed greater people than most baseline people will ever meet. I've ended greater lives than a few plagues. I'm a weapon of mass destruction sporting the form of a person, and I don't forget maximum of them. The woman with the bread, the employees on Chronos Secundus. These I take into account proper now on this moment. However, in a week or a month they'll fade into the general texture of provider, indistinguishable from 10,000 different kills, forgotten so completely it will be as though they never existed. That is what we're. That is the truth. We are reminiscence holes in strength armor. We are amnesia engines. We kill and forget and kill once more. And countless cycle. And the forgetting is not a bug, but a function carefully engineered via stimulants and conditioning, so we are able to function without breaking. And it's far vital. That's what makes it unforgivable. It's miles important. Without us, the Imperium falls. Without us, humanity dies. Our crimes are justified by means of their necessity. We are monsters and provider to survival. We are evil in service to a greater suitable that won't absolutely exist, but that we have to agree within, due to the fact the alternative is to admit we've completed these items for not anything. I record to Chaplain Morris the next morning. I input his chamber, a sparse room lit with the aid of candles that smell of sacred oils, and I kneel earlier than him. He stands above me in his skull helm, icon of loss of life incarnate, and he waits for me to speak. I say, I'm experiencing doubt, Lord Chaplain. He does no longer respond immediately. The silence stretches. Then he says, describe the character of your doubt, Brother Sergeant. I inform him. I tell him approximately the woman with the bread. I inform him about the employees on Chronos Secundus. I inform him about the hollow feeling, the feel of being a weapon that has forgotten it turned into someone. I tell him about 347 years of service that since an increasing number of complicated suicide. I tell him the entirety, words spilling out in a confession I did not realize I needed to make. Once I finish, he's quiet once more. Then he gets rid of his helm, an unusual gesture, and that I see his face for the primary time in a long time. It isn't what I expected. It's miles old, distinctly vintage, skin like crumpled paper, eyes sunken and dark. He ought to be 500 years vintage, perhaps greater. Historical beyond imagining for an estates, he says. Do you know the way vintage I'm, Brother Sergeant? I shake my head. 632 years. I've served longer than maximum remember is viable. I've forgotten greater battles than you've got fought. I have beaten extra doubts than you've got at thoughts. Do what I've learned in all that time? He waits. I do no longer answer. Not anything. I've learned nothing. The doubt never is going away. You surely get higher at ignoring it. The hollowest you sense, that is accurate. This is accurate. We're whole. We're guns. We have been emptied of the whole lot except feature. This isn't a flaw. That is design. The Emperor made us this manner because humanity wishes guns extra than it needs heroes. He steps closer, his historic face level with mine, his eyes searching mine like he's searching out something specific. You think you are the first to word. You believe you studied your unique in your crisis of faith. Each brother who serves past his 2D century has this moment. Most choose conditioning. They easy it away and continue serving till they die. Some select otherwise. They malfunction. They refuse orders. They're done. A completely few, a treasured few, come to me as you have, looking for steerage. He places his hand on my shoulder, a gesture so surprising I almost recoil. I will inform you what I inform them. You're accurate on your assessment. We are monsters. We are slaves. We're sufferers of a process that devours children and produces killing machines. The whole thing you think is true, but it is also genuine that we are necessary. Both matters are actual simultaneously. This is the anomaly we ought to deliver. He eliminates his hand. I'm able to offer you conditioning. The apothecaries will smooth away your doubt, and you will wake up tomorrow feeling useful again. Or you could deliver this information with you for the rest of your carrier. Feeling every kill, remembering every face till the load either crushes you or makes you into something stronger than easy weapons. Maximum pick forgetting. It's far less difficult. It's miles kinder. But a few pick out to bear in mind. I can't tell you which of them is accurate. I'm able to simplest let you know the selection is yours. He places his helm back on, turning into icon again. Loss of life personified. Document your decision within 3 days. Until then, you are eliminated from energetic duty. Disregarded. I depart his chamber. I stroll the corridors of the fortress monastery. I bypass warfare brothers going about their workouts. Each one a weapon that has forgotten it was a person or that remembers and has chosen to continue. Anyway, I think about the selection, forgetting or remembering, characteristic or consciousness, slavery usual or slavery resisted from inside. I reflect on consideration on 347 years of carrier and marvel if I've the power for every other 300 sporting this weight. I reflect on consideration on the neophytes I educate, their hopeful faces, and wonder if I'm doing them mercy or cruelty via coaching them to be guns. I consider the woman with the bread and the employees who were hungry and the hundreds of thousands I have killed whose names I in no way learned and never will. I reflect on consideration on whether or not there's any meaningful distinction among being a monster who is aware of what he is and being a monster who does not. 3 days later, I go back to Chaplain Morris. I kneel earlier than him and I say, I'm able to remember. He nods slowly. Then you'll suffer. Each day until dying or insanity claims you. You recognize this? Sure. Why? Why pick this? I don't have any excellent answer. I look for one and locate simplest fragments, portions of reasoning that do not pretty cohere. Sooner or later, I say due to the fact someone should don't forget them. Despite the fact that it is most effective me, even if it changes nothing, a person must convey the burden. He is silent for an extended second. Then he says, this is the maximum human element I have heard in a century. Very well. You may hold your service without conditioning. I'm able to screen you. In case you become compromised, in case you endanger the bankruptcy, I'm able to execute you myself. Do you be given those phrases? Yes, Lord Chaplain. Then go back to responsibility. May additionally the Emperor have mercy on you, Brother Sergeant, because I do now not assume you will have mercy on yourself. I leave his chamber. I return to my cellular. I kneel before the iron aquila and that I try to pray, but the words still stick in my throat. Instead, I take a seat in silence, feeling the weight of 347 years pressing down on me, just like the chains of contrition, and that I accept it. I take delivery of that I am a monster. I be given that I will stay a monster. I be given that nothing I do will redeem the things I've executed or will do. However, I will consider. I can convey them with me. All the faces, all the names I in no way learned, all of the crimes dedicated within the Emperor's call. I'm able to convey them till I destroy or die. And perhaps that isn't always redemption. However, it's far something. It is witness. It is acknowledgement. It's miles the handiest dignity I can provide them. I'm Brother Sergeant Kyle Varanes of the Angels Penitent, and I've served for 347 years. I will in all likelihood serve for 300 extra. I'm able to train neophytes and lead squads and kill inside the Emperor's call. I will do these items because they're important and because I'm too much of a coward to refuse. But I'm able to do them with my eyes open. I will consider, as a way to ought to be.